Gather round, one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your source for the best in RPG interviews. I am your host, the King of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and today we are joined by the mind behind Gila RPGs. Currently, he's got a campaign on Kickstarter with just 61 hours to go as we're doing the stream here. The game is Slayers. It's Slay or Be Slain. And we are, of course, joined by Spencer Campbell. Spencer, welcome to Rollin' Bones.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. When I got the email from you and I saw the campaign that you were running here, I could not resist bringing you on the show. This game looks awesome.
Thank you. I'm very proud of it. I hope it looks awesome. The art alone, like, there's some pretty fantastic people in the game on the team working on it. I'm very proud of it, and it's been a whirlwind month with the campaign right now. I can't believe it's over in like 60 hours.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we are in the midst of that final push. The last few hours, as people who've done Kickstarter campaigns are familiar with. I've never done one myself, but I've heard that, you know, kind of the last few hours of the campaign are some of the most harrowing and nail biting, and also some of the most fruitful.
Yeah, I've only done one other Kickstarter other than this, and it was for Zine Quest earlier this year. And there definitely was that bump in the end because everybody gets that reminder email of, hey, that thing that you were following, it's going to end soon. And so there's usually a little bit of a surge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Spencer, we are going to start this interview the same way we start every interview. I've got these questions that I like to hear from everyone. So I guess to kick things off, how did you get into RPGs?
I got into RPGs, I think, maybe in a way that is kind of familiar to a few folks. I was first into board games and actually like tabletop war games in high school. And so played a lot of games like that, war games. And then what we ended up doing when we would play things like 40K is we would just pretend to be the characters anyway, and we would create these stories, and we would have these like the battles weren't just isolated events. We'd be writing our own narrative. So in a way, we were kind of role playing, though not with maybe a codified system in place. So that sense of play of pretending to be somebody else started there actually with wargaming stuff. And then actually college didn't touch it at all. But when I went to grad school, immediately found my nerd group of friends and was introduced to role-playing there and have been role-playing consistently for the last decade or so.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of come at things by that same unusual path myself, because I'm also, you know, my first game was 40K, and then I was also into HeroClix as well. And then I discovered RPGs.
We were so into HeroClix. We maybe a little too into HeroClix now and think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, HeroClix, I'm a huge comic book fan, so HeroClix was like, that was going to be my gateway drug. It was inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So, of all the games that you've played just over the years in RPGs, what's been your favorite?
Oh, boy. I think my favorite game I honestly goes back and forth between two, but my favorite game, I think that I have the best memories of is playing Blades in the Dark. So playing like Blades in the Dark is, in my opinion, an incredibly elegantly designed game.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's rules light enough that you can learn it relatively easily, but there's a lot of small moving gears that once you understand how the machine works, you can really make it sing in an interesting way. The reason I like Blades so much is that I ran it concurrently. So I had three different groups that I was the GM for, all in the same timeline, same city. So their actions were interfering with one another, and I would be writing like a newspaper between sessions for the other groups to read. It was
Mhm.
very involved. So I think just the fact that we all got so into that game, so into our characters, into the world, that one will always have a special place in my heart.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard a lot about focus camera. Sorry, my camera is randomly out of focus. There we go. So I've heard a lot about Blades in the Dark.
Mm.
One of the guys that I regularly game with, Keith Patempa, he has offered to run it for us. And, I looked it up. I found it absolutely fascinating. I've never gotten the chance to play it, though, but that sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, as somebody who's obsessed with like the genre of crime and heists, which like my first Kickstarter earlier this year was a game about robbing banks and stuff like that. A
Mhm.
game that's about crime, but also in a setting that is essentially the Dishonored setting, which is a video game that I also really love.
Oh, yeah.
It just had two things that I couldn't say no to, and so it was inevitable that I would love this game more than any other game.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something undeniably cool about that kind of Victorian bordering on steampunk aesthetic that you get from stuff like that. I mean, like I just got I love Dishonored as well, but I
Mm.
just got Assassin's Creed Syndicate not too terribly long ago. One that I just completely looked over, but it's that same kind of 1860s setting. It's yeah, I'm all about that. I'm there for that.
That one's sitting on my list of the infinite Steam list, or games to get to eventually. I have Syndicate squared away on some platform. I'll get around to it when I get around to it.
We have a guest question, kind of interrupting the typical flow of these questions from my wife,
Oh.
Elfie. She wants to know if having a master's degree makes you a classier DM.
Well, it's a doctorate, so it makes me the classiest GM by
Absolutely,
those rules.
absolutely. Because I will say, having a B or a BA in philosophy does nothing for your game.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I have a PhD in psychology, which probably makes me overthink everything in my games.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, having a BA in philosophy makes you think about things and present scenarios that your characters, who in their moments are just like, we kill it.
Right. I'm not here to think. What? I'm not here to feel.
Although I will say there was a very clear. I'm running a Dark Sun game right now, and there was a situation that I thought was going to be a very clear, either we do this or we do this situation, and my players turned it into like the biggest ethical nature versus nurture. What's the right thing to do? What kind of world are we creating if we make this decision? I was just like, whoa, guys, guys.
That's cool though. That's
Mhm.
I mean that's players, right? They always
Yeah.
take you on a path that you never expect.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, getting back to kind of the early days of gaming, do you remember your first character?
Uh so I'm the forever GM.
Yep, I
Uh
figured.
so I I think I've played characters I can count on one hand, maybe going on to the second hand, the number of times I've actually been a PC in a game.
Hmm.
So I think the first time I actually got to play was when one of my players took the GM seat in a world that we had all kind of collaboratively built over the few years, and he ran the game for a little bit as like we were all we're all professors, and so we run like season during the school year and then like a different game in the summer. So he was the summer game,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to play a cleric during that. That was my first character. Now it was a D&D cleric. I don't remember too many details because it's just one of those things that I so rarely get to do, and it was like a flash in the pan moment.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah. And for anyone in chat who's wondering, yes, I do realize that my mismatched lighting here makes me look like a villain. There's no way getting around it. Either you see half my face or I look like this.
Exciting.
My D&D players are used to me looking like a villain, so it's all right.
There you go. You just lean into it.
Now, as the forever GM, do you have a forever NPC that somehow always manages to make their way into your games?
Yes, there is one who always makes his way into every campaign. Now that I think about it, and it's it's through time traveling nonsense. Essentially, this character has managed to show up in almost every campaign that I can think of because they are the premise is that they are a scientist that has been working on time travel and is routinely succeeding but failing at the same time, and so they keep getting stuck in the time of whenever my campaign is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will always be that my players know that they found him. His name is Hugo. They know they found Hugo when they find the one part of the world that has slightly better technology than everywhere else in the world, because Hugo is there desperately trying to build his time machine to get back to his time.
Nice.
So that's their like, oh, we found Hugo. Okay, now we know where he is.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, when it comes to GMing and a little bit playing, if you want to discuss your play style a little bit, but how would you describe your GM style? Like, what do you like to create for your players when you run games?
I lean heavily into the idea of leaving blank spaces on maps, and not only on maps, but just in scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So I follow like James D'Amato, who does the GMing for the One Shot podcast and also the campaign. He's a fantastic GM, and I'm a little biased because he's also from Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
but he always goes to the players and asks them to paint the picture of the scene with him. They get to introduce not only like visual elements of the scene, but also like tangible, possible like plot relevant elements.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just infinitely interesting to me. Um, my earliest days were very prep heavy. I'm going to map this whole thing out. I'm going to actually draw maps. I'm going to have every little thing detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gone to the point where I have like 5 words written down on the page and I'm flying by the seat of my pants. And that's much more my GM style now. I'm much more comfortable with it now. I think if I tried to do that in the beginning, it would be a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the type of GM that I am the type of teacher where I'm constantly asking you a question rather than you asking me questions. So I ask
Mm-hmm.
my students questions constantly in class, and I do the same thing to my players. I'm always asking them questions because what they come up with is probably going to be more interesting than what I come up with anyway.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that brings up just kind of a general good piece of advice for anyone starting out as a GM. Um, Luke Hart and I talked about this a little bit in our episode on leveling up your game, but those article or those posts that you read on Reddit about I winged the whole thing and it went fantastically, those are lies.
Right.
You in the beginning you need to prepare, you need to kind of know what's going on because your improv skills might not be there. But also be prepared to just completely throw all of that out the window immediately because as we've said on here multiple times, no plan survives contact with the players.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I've some of my first groups were Chicago improv comedians, which means they're impossible to try and keep up with. So I knew early on that I couldn't try to plan anything. And so that's when I started to get comfortable with improv, because I had to do it to survive with them.
Now, were they those Chicago improv comedians, or were they other Chicago improv comedians?
They were like legitimate Chicago improv comedians. They were very successful, and not. I've done one level of classes at IO, and now I think I'm an improv comedian, sort of comedians. Not to
Gotcha.
disparage.
Yeah, because Chicago is kind of like the hub for that. That's right. It's like where Steve Carell and
everybody
Stephen
comes out of the
Colbert
second city.
Yeah.
So anybody who you know in comedy has probably gone through Chicago at some point.
Absolutely. Now, this next question can be a little bit difficult for people because, anyone who's going to appear on a podcast like this, we have a lot of memories tied up in this hobby. A lot of them are, some of the best memories of our lives. But if you had to pick a fondest RPG memory, what would that be?
Oh, that's very hard. I think it's going to have to be in my Blades trio of campaigns that I had been running. No, actually, scratch that. I just thought of something that I liked even more. There was a time when I was introducing a handful of my friends to role-playing games, and we came together. I introduced them, they played, they enjoyed the session that we played, and we decided to come back the next week, and we would play over breakfast food, so we'd all make breakfast food. And when I had my players show up, they all came without me saying anything, either dressed in character or with props or anything like that. They were ready to go, more so than I could have possibly imagined. And it was one of those days where they kept asking for more that we ended up playing for 12 hours straight, which was
amazing.
Like I had, these were people who were completely new to the hobby, had no idea what they were getting into. They were hooked after session 1 and then wanted a 12-hour marathon the next time, which was like, that felt good. That felt good that I had shown them something that they could get so excited about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the bard actually brought a guitar and was playing songs the whole time. It was great.
That's fantastic. Now, unfortunately, we do have to kind of sink the ship a little bit because, we share the table with all kinds of people. Some of them become our best friends in the whole world. Some of them, demand 12-hour sessions and end up creating the fondest memories that we have of the games. But some of them we just don't click with. And then there's a special class of player with the term of that guy that we associate with that particular type of player. So if you have a story that you're comfortable sharing on the show, what is your that guy story?
I got two. I'm trying to think of which one to tell. It was the one that will always stick with me came early in my career as a GM, because like I said, I got introduced in grad school, but I also was the one who immediately had to GM too. So I had to learn how to GM and just this concept of role playing at the same time. And I had this group of people who we were all very good friends in grad school, where one of them decided to be an evil character, which is going to cause problems if you don't have discussions about what it means to have an evil character in the party, and if not everybody's going to be evil. But since none of us had ever really role played before, we were like, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be interesting to have an evil character around. Cut to 4 sessions in, and I don't know what the language allowed on this show is.
You let it fly. It's all right. It's all good.
So he's saying, fuck you, Pat. Fuck you, Hinsey. Fuck you, Spencer. He's to everybody, because he tried to do something evil, and the players understandably were like, you probably shouldn't do that. And it was the whole argument that you see on those nightmare posts of, well, it's what my character would do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When sure your character might do that, but we are here as people around the table who have to deal with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that will always just stick with me because it happened so early on in my time just role playing, but also as a GM that I learned a lot of valuable lessons that night. He never came back. He stormed out and never came back. But we continued to play as a group for 4 more years. So it didn't destroy the campaign. It was just a odd disruption, and then I took his character and made it an evil character that they all got to kind of get catharsis and kill later on.
Love it. Yeah, I mean that's a trap that a lot of new players and then a lot of old players do it too, where you just instead of being an actual character, the evil character, the quote unquote evil character, ends up just being the player's id gone wild.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Which was ironic because we were all psychologists, and he really just let it loose.
Yep, absolutely. Elfie would like to know, going back to your 12-hour session there, if because this was an unexpected breakfast party, if these were all hobbits that you were running a game for.
One of them is Hobbit-like, if I had to think about it, but no, this was a ragtag group of individuals, of scrappy Chicago improv comedians, like I said, who suddenly realized they really like playing make-believe in a way that they've never played before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, we come to our last of these introductory questions. This one has flummoxed a lot of people, including last week's guest. And the answer to this can be as philosophical or sophomoric as you want it to be. So, if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
Oh. Wow. If I could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be anything related to role-playing games. It would be a psychology-related thing, which will be the thing that I will rant and fight against till my dying day, which is the Myers-Briggs is bullshit. And I think that might just be it. Or I might write like a Myers-Briggs set of letters and then an equals of BS below that or something like that. I think that would be what I would do, because I hate the Myers-Briggs personality test.
Yeah.
The passion.
Yeah, I do too.
So that would be my answer. It has nothing to do with the games, but it has everything to do with my loathing of that test.
Anytime I see Myers-Briggs letters, I just have like Vietnam flashbacks to the brief period where I was doing online dating, and just how people would put those letters in their bios, and I'd just be like, what does that mean? What What are you trying to say?
I've learned nothing.
That doesn't tell me anything.
Right.
It tells me you answered a couple questions on the internet.
Right. So yeah, that's my shirt, and I'm gonna keep screaming that until I'm an old man who can't scream anymore.
Absolutely, and we will echo your screams here. At least Elfie and I will, because she has chimed in and said that it's BS and that your Hogwarts house is more telling.
Yeah, that's actually something I talk to my students about.
I love it. You might as well put your alignment chart on there too.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well. They're all equally useful forms of any BuzzFeed like which Game of Thrones character you are. That's an equally valid test of your personality.
Yeah. The one with the dogs too. That's my favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
Although that's my favorite because I ended up being my favorite kind of dog.
All right, it worked out.
I am a beagle, so there's that.
Ooh, a beagle. I love beagles.
I do too.
They're pretty great.
Absolutely.
I fell in love with beagles because of the book Shiloh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you read Shiloh ever.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It was a big book when I was a kid. It was about a beagle. I'm pretty sure it's a beagle, and it's very cute.
Mhm.
Just an adventure of a dog. Very heartwarming.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of things that are equally heartwarming, we've got this campaign here for Slayers. So, if you had to give just an elevator pitch for what Slayers is, go ahead and give us that here on Rollin' Bones.
Okay. So Slayers is a monster hunting role playing game that takes place in a cursed city. And the thing that makes it special is that each class plays the game mechanically very differently than all of the other classes to try and create a sense of feeling and embodying your class more so than we see in traditional role playing games.
Gotcha. Yeah, and kind of looking over the campaign information here, it literally is every single character has a unique kind of pool of dice that works in a different way, and it really is for anyone who hasn't backed the campaign yet. I encourage you to go to the Kickstarter page, if only to see how these classes uh, play versus each other, and just kind of see the uniqueness that we have there.
Yeah, it comes from my love of board games. I was really into board games before I got into role playing games, and asymmetry is a relatively common thing you'll see in board games, but
Mhm.
we wouldn't see asymmetry to the degree that was looking for in role playing games. The example I always talk about is Root. I don't know if you've heard of or played the board game Root before.
Mm-hmm.
It's so like everybody's playing the same game. You're all wanting to get victory points, but literally every person around the map is playing a wildly different game from one another. And I wanted to take that idea and see if it would work in a role playing game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And one that comes to mind for me, I've not played Root. I've heard great things about it. I know a lot of people who love it. But what comes to mind for me, a game that I've played a lot of recently and's been kind of popular recently, is Disney's Villainous.
Yes, absolutely. I love Villainous.
Yeah, Villainous is great. As a dedicated libertarian, nothing gives my wife more joy than hearing me have to say the words taxes, beautiful, lovely taxes when I'm playing Prince John in Villainous.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Villainous is like a perfect example of it. It's everybody is doing like the core rules are there. You all follow the same idea, but
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do and how you need to do it is going to be really different than the person sitting across the table from you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, in the world of the game, this whole thing takes place inside what you call the city, which seems to be, as the Kickstarter text says here, at the nexus of the world. So it seems to be kind of in this weird in between place where all these different nasty things come into play. Is that accurate to kind of what you
Yeah,
had in
more.
mind there?
Yeah, so the city is called the city because it takes the idea of urban sprawl literally. It's a city that never ends. Like it quite literally keeps expanding towards the horizon. And is it because it's cursed? Is it a spell? Is it whatever? I'll let you as a table figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is it keeps getting bigger, and since it's been doing that for forever, its real name, its history has been lost. So we just call it the city, and it keeps creating these districts, these unique little biomes or microcosms of, they're like neighborhoods of a major city,
Yeah.
but they can be really, really different from their neighboring districts because they are just kind of manifesting overnight. And so the idea is that as you're playing Slayers, you're going to be going to places that have, like, it's important to talk about what does the architecture of this district look like? What are the culture? What is the food that people are eating? Because that stuff is actually going to help you hunt the monsters because it's relevant to where you're going to be going, as opposed to it's a city that's just really big, but it's all kind of the same city.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, when it comes to an ever expanding city filled with kind of limitless possibilities, what does the monster variety look like in a game like this?
So there's a lot of different types of monsters. You're going to see monsters in the book that are familiar to you. You know, if you come from something like D&D, you're going to see a skeleton. You're going to see a troll and things like that.
Mhm.
A lot of them have been changed to fit an urban environment as opposed to maybe the natural environment that you would see them in. But then there's also a lot of very strange creatures that either I created on my own or I've taken mythical things or things from folklore and kind of turned them into a more horrifying version of that thing in the world. So there's a lot, actually, like a lot of human or humanoid enemies or monsters in the book that are equally as monstrous as, you know, going off and fighting a big dragon in its cave is the half undead person who sings songs that raises the dead from the ground.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you mentioned here on the campaign this idea of hacking and creating new classes, new monsters. Uh, how easy or difficult is it to kind of throw in your own homebrewed creatures or nasties for your slayers to have to take out?
What I have learned is that it's really easy, which is like a huge relief for me because I,
Mhm.
I I had hoped that it was. What I've learned since I put the quick start rules out is I've had a lot of people reaching out to me saying, "I want to make something for Slayers. Can I?" And yes, first of all, yes, do it. Make anything you want.
Mhm.
But second of all, I did a playtest last Saturday with some friends, and one of my friends, she came back the next day and had created 5 new classes for the game.
Hmm.
Each taking that same idea of playing with dice in a very unique way, so that it embodied the idea of unique classes, play experiences. But at least according to her words, there's enough that there's it's a small moving parts sort of game so that it's really really easy to hack and mess with. So I've she came out with 5 classes. I have another person who put together a huge monster generation table. I have another friend who's already making a sci-fi version of Slayers. So
Nice.
I'm very happy to hear that it is as easily hackable as I kind of hoped it was, and that people are interested in hacking it the way that I had hoped they'd be interested in.
Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I get this game, any players that I can Shanghai into running it for, just so you guys know what you're in for. You will in fact be going up against Aleshin, because
Oh,
how could I not?
yes, exactly. And then the cool thing is thinking about like what is a lesson like in an urban environment,
Mm,
as
oh yeah.
opposed to thinking about it in like kind of a natural foresty sort
Hmm.
of setting.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm excited now. I love it
Great.
because
I'm glad you're excited.
I had to homebrew. Well, I say I had to homebrew. I had to find someone else's homebrew for Aleshin when I wanted to throw it at my Saturday campaign.
Mm. Yeah, I'm all about the lesson as a monster, as like a concept.
Mm,
So whatever you do put together, please let me know because I would love to see what you come up with.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, with this campaign, I mean, with the core book, we have an example hunt, but we also have, with these stretch goals that have been unlocked so far, 2 other hunts that have been written by kind of guest writers here, and one of them, for those of you who don't already know, is former guest on Rollin' Bones, Banana Chan.
Yes. So I have Banana Chan and Nevin Holmes are both writing adventures for or hunts for the book. So you'll have 3 fully described adventures that you can use straight away and get going and playing the game without having to do very much prep at all as a GM.
Hmm. Gotcha.
I'm very excited that so Nevin is a friend of mine who I met through a game design Discord. He's actually got a Kickstarter coming out next month called Gun and Slinger, which is this really cool 2-player game where one person is a sentient gun, one person plays that, and one person plays the person who's wielding that gun.
Huh.
And it uses cards, and it sounds strange, but trust me, it's very cool. It uses
Hmm.
a version of Go Fish as part of the core mechanic.
Hmm.
So Nevin has been helping me with some read-throughs and things like that, and playthroughs of Slayers, and so he wanted to write something, and then Banana Chan actually reached out to me because we had both recently been interviewed by another person who connected us. So it was somebody played the social lubricant and got us together.
Hmm.
So I'm very excited to have the two of them writing for the book.
Gotcha. Now, was this person who connected you John Hambone McGuire?
No.
Okay. Because that's who connected me with Banana.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, John's one of the co-hosts of the Vintage RPG podcast. I know that he and Stu like to bring people on to talk about new games that are coming out. So I was just curious.
Oh, gotcha. No, we got introduced by Garm at Midgardia, who does an interview thing for Kickstarter stuff.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, when it comes to building out a hunt, what do you feel in the playtests that you've run and working on this game? What do you feel makes for a good hunt for people who are gonna create their own after they run through the scenarios?
There's a few things that, having done it myself and talking with Nevin and Banana about it, that we all kind of agreed are the things that are essential to a hunt. So a hunt, at least as they're written in the book, follow roughly a 3-act structure to them. So the first act is an introduction to the district that the hunt is going to be taking place in and early investigations. And that part is really there's a heavy emphasis for the slayers and for the players to be introducing elements to the district, building the district and what it looks like and feels like with the GM, rather than the GM having written out this whole map of what the district looks like. There's this kind of collaborative world building at a very small scale that goes on in Act 1. And then Act 2 is the investigation kind of going strong. They're trying to figure out where this monster is or weaknesses or why it's doing this. There's a few conflicts along the way to kind of warm the players up to the idea of fighting, especially if it's your first time playing, getting used to how your class works.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third act is fighting the thing that you've been hired to fight. And generally, and I think this is in all three of the hunts, the monster in that hunt usually has some rules that are special or different than a lot of the other monsters that you're going to see in the books. They have something that makes them unique. So rather than just taking one of the existing monsters and giving it more HP, leaning into the idea of asymmetry, giving it rules that don't make any sense compared to the other monsters or are really different than the other monsters, so that you go, oh, this is the bad one. This is the one that we're actually trying to kill.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So that's the rough. And then hopefully you succeed. And then if you succeed, character advancement is based off of successful hunts and some reflection period afterwards, where the slayers talk about the hunt and their experience.
Gotcha. So, I mean, bringing up that idea of experience, that kind of leads me into the next question about the structure of this game. Is this designed for, we're gonna take this evening and we're gonna do a hunt, and it's just gonna be kind of light and casual, or is this designed in a way to have campaigns of multiple hunts kind of strung together?
So there's definitely enough there for you to have a campaign with multiple hunts strung together to, I want people to build the city with time with their group. I want them to, with each hunt, put a new district into their version of the city. And so how they want to map it, if they want to map it, they're going to have a really different version of the city than another group. And you can do that as either a bunch of one-shots that are just kind of popping in and around the city, but there are elements to the game that encourage campaign play because your characters advance. They get better the longer that they're hunting. There's no experience points. It's akin to milestone XP, where just finish the job. If you finish the job, you level up, which means that you get to take another one of the advances, the things that make your characters even cooler than they already are.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, digging in a little bit to how these characters play, as we mentioned, each character has a different play style. The general mechanic here is it's D6s, and a 4 or greater is a success. But each character that, like the Kickstarter says, the 4 plus means something different. And one way that this really plays out that I feel like is super cool and very evocative of, like the video games that I know and love, and also one of my favorite RPGs, Savage Worlds, is the way that the blade plays with the combo system.
Yeah, exploding dice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If you like exploding dice, people love the blade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea, rather than exploding dice that only explode on the highest value, the blade is supposed to be the fighter of the group, the kind of the traditional swords fighter. But I don't. My personal preference is not playing big like armor wearing fighters, but like the faster, more stylish sword fighters. The absolute obvious inspiration for me for this was Dante from Devil May Cry.
Yes.
I just wanted to play as Dante in a role playing game, and so I wanted to make a class that was all about finding stylish combos and like finding the advantageous moment to attack something, and like the stances that the blade takes and shifts between is absolutely, you can see, taken from Devil May Cry. So that hopefully when you're playing the blade, as you're doing the stance switching stuff and watching your attack dice explode every time you roll a 4 or above, and you're racking up these huge combos, you feel like that stylish sword fighter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, with the gunslinger, this is very specifically a 6-shooter gunslinger, but you've got your six dice, like the 6 bullets in the cylinder, and managing those dice that you have there is kind of the key mechanic there. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a bit of resource management was the idea. And I really like the idea of you have the 6 dice in front of you in a circle, so it looks like the gun. Like those are the bullets, and you're picking it up and deciding, I'm going to use this bullet right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And is there any kind of recharge mechanic on that? Like after a certain amount of time, you can do 6 more bullets, or like how does that work?
So just like the blade has an action that they can take during their turn, which changes their stance, the gunslinger can reload. So everybody takes 2 actions during their turn.
Yep.
And so one of those actions that the gunslinger can do is they can fire a certain number of bullets, and then they can reload a certain number of bullets. And they have the ability to change how much they fire and how much they reload based off of how advanced their character is, and having completed more hunts and become more of a veteran.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Then we go to the Arcanist, which is your spellcaster in a way, and there's a system here with corruption where the more you cast it's almost like the aforementioned Dark Sun, where your magic has a cost to it, and the more you cast, if you're not careful, the more corruption and chaos abounds.
Exactly. I wanted to create an element to sort of push your luck, where you can boost your spells as an Arcanist and make them even more potent and powerful, but doing so adds to the corruption. And the elements of the push your luck is that you have to kind of compare your dice rolls to your current corruption, and if it's over, then something is going to happen. A complication is going to happen. I'm inspired by games like Trophy. Like Trophy Dark, which is how we get ruin in Trophy Dark, is kind of a clear line between that and how the Arcanist works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love I love chaos magic and the way it plays out in so many RPGs. One of my friends, unfortunately, I wasn't playing in this game, but one of my friends recently, they were running Storm King's Thunder. And they were a wild mage sorcerer, and they rolled on the wild magic surge table and caused a tsunami to hit Waterdeep.
Ooh, okay, very cool. See, I love that. I love chaos and magic. I want magic to feel chaotic.
Yep. And then the last of these kind of four classes that we have here to start with is the tactician, and the tactician works almost like the warlord in 4E, where you're able to enable the other slayers to kind of move around more tactically and uh, take advantage of the situations that you set up for them. Um, which again, it's always cool to have, and if you have that player who likes to think strategically, there's always the controller player at the table, the
Mm.
guy who likes the control deck and magic, who likes to optimize their character, giving them kind of that thing where they can kind of step back and be more tactical about how not just themselves but everyone reacts is always a good thing.
Right. This comes from me loving war games and seeing things from a bigger picture. And I played control decks, I played blue decks in Magic. And I also wanted to make that concept of like being a support character a little bit different. So the tactician is absolutely the support.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling the other slayers when to move and when to act, but they're also quite literally swapping out dice in a pool that they roll at the start of combat with any other dice that are being rolled, so that they're kind of orchestrating the fight to their own rhythm, a rhythm that they hear in their own head,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a very cool way of doing support rather than just giving buffs and like advantage rolls again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, taking a massive step back from everything we've discussed, kind of the nitty gritty of the game, let's go all the way back to just the initial inspiration for this game. Where did the idea for this game spring forth from?
So Slayers came from me making two games at the same time that both I hit roadblocks on both of them, and I didn't want to give up on the ideas of the game, so I decided to peanut butter and jelly it and smash the rule sets together. So I was working on a game that was supposed to be Street Fighter esque, like combo fighting
Mm-hmm.
idea, which is where you're getting the elements of the blade. And I was working on, and I'm still working on, a gunslinging kind of Weird West game where you did the six dice that you were tracking and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so each of those games in separate development wasn't getting as far as I wanted with either one. And so I decided, how could I? Is it even possible to smash these things together? Because they're so different. And that's where Slayers kind of emerged, was my desire to take two systems that I thought were very cool that I had come up with and make them work together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and there's something just really evocative and cool about the urban environment where everything's a potential threat. There's something out there in this vast cityscape that's trying to kill you. I mean, we could go through all the things. Assassin's Creed has that feel
Right.
to it. Uh, One of my favorite movies, The Warriors, definitely.
There
Like
you
as soon
go.
as I heard about that, I was just like, "Oh, this is like a Warriors game."
Yeah, I pretty clearly love role playing games that take place in urban environments, like
Mm-hmm.
where the whole thing takes place. Like that's why Blades in the Dark is my favorite game, and my second favorite game is Spire,
Yeah.
because Spire only takes place in this mile high city, and I love that idea of this urban environment that even if it's constrained by walls, there's an infinite number of horrible things that could be going on inside of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the urban RPG is a not often tread but very very awesome environment for a lot of players. I just not too terribly long ago came off of an urban game,
Hmm,
and it
cool.
it was one of the best games that I'd played in, just because of the unique aspects of you need to obviously be good at combat, but also in the D&D type setting that we were in, it was 5th edition D&D. You also need to have your wits about you, be able to keep your eyes open and also be able to survive a social interaction.
Right. Like dealing with social interactions, dealing with like navigating a city, thinking about social norms, thinking about like factions. Factions in an urban environment are like super, super interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because like at a wider scale world thing, you've got factions of like, yeah, this kingdom and this kingdom hate each other. But like inside of a city, inside of a kingdom sort of thing, there's going to be a bunch of little groups that also hate each other or are
Mm-hmm.
at odds with one another. And I love tinkering with that and pushing these groups against each other and putting the players in between those groups.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So this game, like we said, the Kickstarter campaign has just hours to go. We're in the final stretch here. But it looks like you guys are set to release right around October of this year. Uh, do as it stands right now, uh, is that still kind of an accurate timeline for you?
Yeah, that's good to go. I've got the rules on my end are written,
Mm-hmm.
and so at this point, the things that need to be added to the book are the guest adventures from Nevin and Banana, and then there's a few more art pieces that I'm waiting on that will get thrown into the final thing. And then the other thing that actually still needs to be written and that I'm kind of co-writing with people are there's 5 more districts that are going to be put in, which will be these sort of like one page, like detailed, dense prompts for you. So these will be, I have 2 districts in the book, but then there was a tier on the Kickstarter that if you backed it, you got to write a district with me. So these people, I'm going to work with them to create one of those really weird, unique neighborhoods, and it's going to have locations and plot hooks and things like that, so that if you don't want to jump into one of the fully fleshed out adventures right away, you could start with one of these districts and it gives you these little breadcrumbs that you can follow. So those need to be written, but otherwise, the book is largely together. So I don't see any reason other than uh, with the postal service being in threat and with a number of issues with like COVID going on, shipping delays. But I think otherwise, the October thing should be good to go.
Awesome, awesome. Now, when it comes to distribution, once backers have their copies, are you going through drive-through RPG? How are you selling this game to people once the backers have their copies and the game is available?
Yeah, so the digital version will be up on itch.io.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find the PDF version, and that's where all the electronic versions of the core book and then anything else that comes out will be up there, as well as my website Gila RPGs.com. That's where the book will be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you buy it from me, but the book is also going to be on a few other websites. So Exalted Funeral has copies pre-ordered with the Kickstarter. So if you like supporting Exalted Funeral, you can get it from them. Floating Chair is also going to have some copies as well. So there's going to be a few online stores other than my own website that you'll be able to find it on.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And I know with this initial campaign still going on, this might be kind of a big future question here, but moving forward, past this initial release, what does support for this game look like?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about like post-release Slayer's World
Mm-hmm.
because the book is going to be released with a fully open license for people to hack and make and alter the game in whatever way they want and sell the things that they make. I want people to not only be encouraged to make things, but to be compensated for their work.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't. First of all, I can't wait for all the people who have been talking to me about the things that they're making to put that stuff out there. I'll also be putting together a sort of creators kit that will have templates and things like that for, hey, if you want to make a Slayer's class, here's generally what it should have and some like a template you can follow. Same thing with the district in a hunt and things like that, so that
Mm-hmm.
people have tools. Um, Things that I want to make eventually, I want to release uh, new classes. I also want to release like subversions or like variants of the classes. So if you like the exploding die mechanic of the blade, but you don't want the type of blade I've described. Like, how can we do exploding dice if you want to be the person who's swinging like a huge warhammer, and so you're getting like momentum from swinging a warhammer or something like that, or different types of arcanists that are themed around different types of spells. The thing that I really want to make is a, and it'll probably be like in a zine format, is a system for building and structuring and running a campaign in the city. So coming up with rules on how to, like, really strong rules on how to make districts, how to map the city in a couple of different ways depending on your mapping preferences, and then how to run a long-standing campaign with like factions and things like that, so that you can build your own version of the city and then go talk to another group and see what they did, and it'll be really cool and different. I'm inspired by Heart, which was on Kickstarter recently and is shipping soon. It's made by the same people who made Spire, and everybody's getting this big hex map and with stickers, and you're going to be building your version of the game world with your group, but your version will look really different than another group. And I want to do something similar. That's what I see when I see the city in my head, and so I would love to make something like that.
Yeah, and as far as like adapting this to other settings and stuff like that, there's two that immediately come to mind that I feel like people will be able to do pretty easily with the tools you've given. One is ninjas. The other is like street level vigilantes, and I'm gonna go ahead and give someone out there a layup here. You can combine the two and do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with this pretty easily.
That's actually a really, really, really good idea. I'm in love with that idea. Yeah, somebody needs to make that.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like IDW Games currently has that license though, so releasing that and getting paid for it might be a little bit harrowing, but
a little tricky.
If you sand off some of the copyrights there and say like martial artist reptiles or something like that, you might be able to.
Martial.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly like you said though. Like that's what I want, is I want people to see that they could take this structure of a simple core mechanic and everybody plays the game differently. Like, you can make an infinite number of classes. You can make an infinite number of different hacks of this game, as long as you kind of keep that premise in mind. Like, I have friends who are already thinking about like classes that are going to be almost dexterity based, so like stacking dice and flicking dice in weird ways as opposed to rolling them. And I think that's really cool. Or like I have somebody who wants to make like a beast master class, and so the dice are going to actually represent the beasts that they have and how they interact with their beast when they're giving it commands. It's very cool to hear what people come up with. I'm actually kind of jealous because people are coming up with ideas that are cooler than mine.
Yeah, but I will say, kind of the base setting that you have here, again, this kind of Dishonored-ish looking setting does look pretty fascinating itself. The whole blades and guns mixed together, the two of them together, always that combination always just kind of tickles my fancy in a way.
Yeah, it's why I love Blades. It's why I love Dishonored. It's probably why I'll love Assassin's Creed Syndicate, because that's the setting that I just keep going back to. I can't say no to.
Absolutely. So, kind of getting off onto some of the other, projects that you've done here. One that definitely caught my eye and actually got me to go all the way up to the let's see what tier. Oh yeah, the $25 tier, so I could get the zine for it. The Score, the heist RPG that you put together, looks absolutely fascinating. So if you could for a little bit talk to us some about Score and how that came together and how that campaign went.
Well, thank you very much for thinking Score is cool. I also think Score is pretty cool. Score was my first Kickstarter, so that was something that I made for Zine Quest earlier this year. Though I had made the game before that, and it was just sitting in a folder on Google Drive with me going, oh, well, I made it. Zine Quest prompted me to actually put it out into a real form. It's a game about robbing banks and pulling off heists and things like that. To take another video game touchstone, it's Payday or
Mm-hmm.
Payday 2, either one of those in video game format, or sorry, in role-playing game format. I love crime, the genre in general.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my games are about crime or about being the bad guys.
Yeah.
So Score is a bank robbing game that has again kind of a relatively simple core mechanic of rolling what I equate to good dice and bad dice at the same time. And your bad dice are going to keep getting bigger and bigger. The pool is going to keep getting bigger and bigger the longer the heist is going on, and it represents the amount of heat that's on you at that time. And so your goal is as a crew to quickly jump into a heist, accomplish the objectives, and get out before the heat gets too hot that one of you gets busted or the whole crew gets busted or something like that. So it borrows heavily from like the concepts of clocks that we see in things like Powered by the Apocalypse games or Blades in the Dark. And then also, actually, a big inspiration is a game that a lot of people I've talked to don't know about it is The End of the World, which is an apocalypse game by Fantasy Flight where you play yourself during the apocalypse.
Hmm.
It's really fun. I think it's out of print now, which is really unfortunate. But the kind of the mechanics are inspired by that.
Mm-hmm.
And I originally designed it as like a really fast one-shot game. Like you would do heists in like about an hour's time, and then with the zine quest going, or the funding on the Kickstarter doing well, I ended up making sort of character advancement rules so that you could play your criminal over like a 6 heist campaign.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And I'm kind of blown away. It is nominated for an Emmy this year, for best rules, which was very I was blindsided by that when that happened. So I'm very honored and very happy and proud of Score. So I'm excited that so many people on the Slayers campaign want to get Score with Slayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, just when I saw that you had put that together, in my head, I just immediately went, "That's brilliant," because so often, and I notice this all the time when I'm playing just vanilla D&D, so often you'll run into a situation where someone at the table goes, "Why don't we just do a heist?" Or
Mm-hmm.
you'll have to acquire something and someone's like, "Why don't we do a heist? Turn this into a heist. We need a heist session." It's
Right.
always in the back of people's minds of, we need a heist in RPG form. But the way that it always ends up working out in so many systems is you have to cobble together rules just based on what you've got. And as a GM, you feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants just trying to keep up with the players, who usually end up happy. But, having a set of rules is like, okay, this is how the heist is going to work. This is the framework that you can work in. You can scratch that itch for your players while not feeling like you have to essentially write your own game, which I think is amazing.
Oh yeah, totally. I've had that same experience of like, oh, I guess we need to do a heist for this campaign, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how we're gonna make it work in a satisfying way. And that is something that you can do with Score. Is you could, I mean, it takes place in modern day, like it's inspired by movies like Heat, but you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
play. Like you could easily put it into a D&D setting. Just take those rules and just change the coat of paint to a fantasy coat of paint, and it still works. Um, I'm actually working on a cyberpunk version of it right now, because I love cyberpunk, and I thought, why
Mm-hmm.
not? There's crime going on there, and why not take my crime game and put it into that world?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Need some kind of overly convoluted system for the person who insists on being the decker.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like, how do I keep this relatively simple core mechanic and make it apply to everybody? It's the opposite of Slayers. Everybody plays by the same rule and scores, and it's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be a simple rule, including the decker, because I tried Shadowrun. I tried it. I just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it always amazes me in all these different systems how the decker causes so many problems because you're either completely halting the momentum of the game or the decker feels like they're just making one dice roll over and over again.
Right.
Which I mean, Hanker Furnell, when I had him on, was just like, it's a dice roll. You're just gonna have to live with it. You can describe it however you want. I'll go down that road for you, but we're not doing this whole complicated thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I know exactly what you're talking about. Where it's like, all right, roll it again, roll hack again, roll hack again, and that's not fun.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of what that comes down to, and a lot of what kind of makes or breaks games like Score or even like Slayer is while you have very simple, mechanics of, you roll this dice and something happens when you get a certain number. It all comes down to how you describe it at the table. That's what makes the difference in a particular session from one session to another.
Absolutely. Like success and failure equally interesting, and we paint that picture together.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's one thing that's great about these rules light games, that, these two games kind of fall into that category. You have so much room to do those kind of cool descriptions and to really paint, mind pictures for your players and for yourself. And that's one strength that so many games like this have, even though, so many of us love our crunch every now and then. The fact that the crunch is not there to get bogged down in just kind of, opens up that freedom. And as GMs and as players, it's on us to overcome the fear of too much freedom and really
Right.
just create something amazing at the table.
Yeah. My hope is that I've given you a big open space to play in, but I've given you enough boundaries that you're not overwhelmed by the space. That you're comfortable in the space that you can play in.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, just kind of rounding out the discussion here, like we said at the top of the episode, we can go ahead, refresh here, see what we're at live on Rollin' Bones as we're having this discussion. We've got 60 hours to go. Over $12,000 have been raised so far.
Yeah.
So funding's been met. Stretch goals are unlocked at this point. We're it's open for those of you who want to get in on the ground floor here, but the tiers that we have, you can contribute whatever you want with Kickstarter. At $10, you get the PDF. At 15, you get the book and the PDF. At the $25 level, which is what I'm at, you've got the PDF, the book, and then the Score PDF and the Score zine. If that conversation intrigued you, and those are the levels that we have right now. Um, like Spencer mentioned at the beginning, there was the initial $100 level to design a district. How is that going so far right now?
So that I've contacted the people who are the architects, but we haven't started brainstorming yet because I want to make sure that the campaign ends before I start brainstorming with them.
Right.
Just because I have had somebody drop out, and so I didn't want to start writing a bunch of district stuff with them before they actually we go all the way through to the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So that is I've sent them sort of a little bit to think about. And in the quick start rules, there's an example district in there so that they have an idea of what a district is going to look like. And then I have reached out to my artist who is doing some of the set piece work to see if she is going to be able to maybe add some more art based off of these districts as well. So I'm really hoping to kind of keep filling the book with more art. Just because we funded as well as we did, I want the book to look really really cool for people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just so everyone knows, according to the text in the Kickstarter, what we're looking at here is it's a hardcover book, but it's a digest size book.
Yeah, so it's going to be that A5 size paper that you see in zines, but with a hardcover on top of it. It's, if you've got Morkborg, if you manage to get lucky and get a copy of Morkborg, it's going to be about that size. It's not going to look like Morkborg because that's a whole other thing. But that's the kind of the size. I like that size book. It's comfortable. It's easy to carry around. It's not going to be like a big hefty tome.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, while I love stuff like Zweihander, uh, that's a big ass book. There's just no getting around it.
Right. Like it's a workout to bring those books around sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you could just throw this little nice digest book into your bag and hit the road, then that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, and even, my two favorite games are 5e and Savage Worlds, and with both of those, both of those game systems, what you're looking at is an investment of carrying around multiple books. So having a small book that you can, pretty easily carry around in a smaller bag, that's great. That really is a convenience.
That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, it'll be that size book because then ultimately, like I said, I want people to make things, and a lot of the people that I know who are making things make things in zine format. So kind of having a uniform size to Slayers related material would be nice as well. So it kind of all informs the decision to go with the digest sized. And then it's hardcover because it wasn't originally a hardcover book. It was paperback, but a stretch goal unlocked hardcover for everyone.
Awesome. Well, the link to this will be in the description on YouTube. You can find it in the show notes if you're listening on audio. As we're recording this, we got 60 hours. This is the last week of the campaign, guys. So if you want in before October when this is released, this is coming up on your last chance to get in before the campaign closes. As we kind of round out here, Spencer, I like to give the guests the opportunity to, plug anything coming up. Obviously, we've got the campaign. Is there anything else that you want to promote as we're, wrapping up today?
So yeah, the Slayers campaign, obviously support that if it sounds interesting to you. There will also be links on the Kickstarter page of places to go to like put your name down if you miss the campaign but want to get a book. I want to figure out who wants to get books and how to get you books. I'm gonna shout out, just because my thing's almost done. I want to shout out two of my friends' Kickstarters, if that's okay.
Absolutely, go for it. The more the merrier.
I have two friends. One is running a Kickstarter right now. Adam Vass is running a Kickstarter for the game Necro Nautilus. You'll find it on Kickstarter when you find the psychedelic colored skull for the cover art. It's a very cool game that mixes elements of wordplay, and you play as literal agents of death. It almost gives me vibes of like Mad Libs meets No Man's Sky. If that sounds cool to you, which it should, that's got like 10 more days, something like that, left in it. And then Nevin Holmes, who is writing an adventure for me for Slayers, his Kickstarter for Gun and Slinger, all one word with an ampersand, is up in August. And I really recommend just checking him out on Twitter. The art he's been showing off is very cool. So I'm going to promote those Kickstarters because I think they are awesome and deserve support.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode of Rollin' Bones. Spencer, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm super excited for this campaign now, even more so than when I jumped on it. This is really going to be something interesting and something that I think my players will have a lot of fun with.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I had a ton of fun talking about it. And yeah, I hope that this game, which I think will be probably a little weird and different for some folks, is very exciting and inspirational at the same time. So thank you for giving me the chance to talk about it. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. No problem at all. Well, guys, that is going to do it for our episode. So coming up this week, this Saturday on Danishes and Dragons, not only will we be having breakfast together, but I will be doing my first ever miniature painting stream. I have not ever streamed my painting process. I don't know how it's going to go. It might be a train wreck. You might hear me use a few more swear words than I typically do. But that's we're gonna try it, and as of right now, you guys will be able to vote on what minis I'm painting. I've got one post up right now on my Instagram at Howard_Ryan Gregg for those of you who don't follow me. And then there'll be another one going up in the next couple of days. It's going to be one fantasy and then one either Western or modern that I'll be doing base coats on, probably finishing those up on a future stream. But you guys will be able to vote on what mini I'm painting. That's up on Instagram. I look forward to it. Next week, I've not yet decided the topic. I don't have a guest booked yet, so stay tuned for what's going on next week's Rollin' Bones. But until then, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.